Hello everyone, we will have an overview of different subsetting techniques that are used in Pandas. And by utilizing code examples, we will cover all of these topics. What is an index? How to subset first n rows based on their position index? Can we change the index? And so on. So by the end of this video and next videos, you will have a very good understanding of how to work with subsetting in Pandas. So let's start with the first step, that's simply importing the Pandas. And then reading the data using read_CSV. So the dataset that we are going to use for this video is the same dataset, Big March sales, that we have already seen. Now we already know that there are two major indexing in Pandas. The first approach gives integer index to each row and column based on its position. So this row number 1, 2, 3, and 4. Because indexing starts in Python from 0, so this is row number 0, 1, 2, and 3, and so on. Similarly, the column indexing starts from the leftmost column and start with 0, 1, and 2, and so on. Now the second approach is label-based indexing, where we work with a label-based index for both rows and columns. Now we have already talked a lot about index. Let's see what this index really is. So we will use here data.index function and run this one. So this is the data frame. Let's see how this index is stored under the hood. Now if you have a close look to the output here, you will see that index starts at 0 and it ends at 8523 with a step size of 1. What does this mean? First of all, let me show you the shape of the data. So the shape of the data is it has 8523 rows and 12 columns. So a basic positional index in Pandas actually starts from 0 and then stops at 8523, which are the number of rows in the data, and then goes at each step with a step size of 1. So this is essentially saying the same thing, that my position index will start at the number 0 and it will go to the total number of rows that are present in my dataset. Similarly, if you want to find what is the index for columns in this data frame that we have just read, you can just do data.columns. And now that you have printed this value, you will notice that the columns have a label-based index because each column has a name by default. So this is how a default Pandas data frame has index. So when you look at by row, it takes the positional index like this, 0, 1, 2, 3. And for columns, by default, it takes the label-based index because each column has its name. Now that you know about this, let's see an example on how to utilize the positional index to get the first n rows of a data frame. This is where the head function comes into picture. Using it, you can access first n number of rows. First of all, if you call this function without any parameter in the parentheses like this, you will just get the first 5 rows of the data. So if you pass a parameter like 10, then you are going to get the 10 rows of the data. You can keep change on this parameter to any value that you like and based on what you want to get. And if you want first n rows, you'll just write here. So the n here means the number of rows you will get from the dataset. Now this was a quick short intro to position-based index and the concept of index in general. The next logical question that comes to my mind is, can we change the index of a data frame? The short answer is yes. So let's see how. So here what I have done is I have created a list of 8523 random numbers. So let me show you the list. So this is the list that I have created. And we'll be setting these random numbers as the new index of the data frame here. So we do data.index is equal to this random list. Now let's see what happens once we have changed this and we can see the data by data.head. Let's see if something changes. Now, do you notice something interesting? Let me show you. Here the first 5 rows of the dataset you see FTA15, DRC01, FTN15. And initially we have this the same FTA15, DRC01, FTN15. So even though we manually change the index of the data frame, the order in which the rows are appearing is still the same. Now, why is this happening? So basically this is happening because whenever we manually update the index of a data frame in Pandas, this new index is actually treated as a label for each of the rows of the data frame. So each of these numbers 4089, 4575 and so on are actually labels for each of these rows in the data frame. So this is an example of a label-based indexing. Since our head function only works with position-based indexing, it doesn't matter what label you give to each row. Whenever you call the head function, it will always show you the first 5 or first n rows of the data frame. This is something to keep in mind because this can cause great amount of confusion and might cause bugs in your code. Now this concept will be much clearer to you by the end of this module. We will continue to learn about subsetting in the following videos. Thank you.